Gwen. That's Gwen. It doesn't look like Gwen. Sticker less. Although,
Talk to him. You say, what did I take notes on last
Give your phone. Yeah. I don't. Can I give you her number?
Yeah.
If you want to, actually, I don't think I have her number.
However, I just get them.
Your number.
Oh, 320.
320 is your haircut.
420-2966.
Dang it. I'm telling you.
Well,
Did you want to call me?
Yeah. See, I have my phone from my car.
We're in stealth mode. I'll leave it out.
Get a project in her. Project in her.
Good morning. I'm going to call our meeting to order by introducing our president, Vince Bollinger.
Yes, sir. All right. You could all please rise. If you care to join me, please do so in honoring our flag and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have a timer this morning? Eric, do you have an opening invitation?
I do.
Please share it.
Today's opening invocation is positive lessons are not always taught in positive ways.
Go ahead, please be seated. I have a handful of guests here. All right, Chad, why don't you stand up, tell us who you are, what brought you here.
Sure. Hi, I'm Chad West. I'm in sales at the degree, and I'm here because I need to brush up on my speaking skills. I was a Toastmaster in the past. Enjoyed it quite a bit. Thought I was done with mastering my speaking skills, but started to get a little nervous again, so I'm back to keep myself sharp. Thanks.
Great. Chad, why don't you stand up, tell us who you are, how you heard about us.
Hi everybody, I'm Judd Moore. I work with Eric at Success Computer Consulting as an account manager and sales rep, and I heard about from Eric and just thought I'd come check it out.
All right, great. All right. Jane.
Hi, my name is Jake Zuber. I'm a former member of TechMasters. I'm here today to talk about podcasting progress.
Wait for guest introductions here in the back.
Yes, that's me.
Chad, stand up, tell us.
Hi, I'm Tyler Yost. This is, I think, the third time that I've been here. So I'm looking to get involved in soccer ball.
All right. Trying to remember.
Jacobus. I'm a developer, so this is my fourth time or so.
All right, great. And once you stand up, tell us who you are, what brought you here.
Hi, thanks. My name is Diane Rucker. Sorry to be a couple minutes when traffic was a little crazier. I'm happy to be here today. I'm going to talk about what it means to pitch for a startup and how everybody needs to pitch, whether you think you're an entrepreneur or not. So thanks very much. I'm very happy to be here today.
Great. All right, any new business? Announcements?
I kind of have an announcement.
Sure thing.
Some of you may know Brandy Favilla. you've been to Code Camp. She's been an organizer of a lot of developer events. I just recently heard that her husband has some wounds from the war. He's a disabled veteran, and they need a lawnmower because their children are moving away from college. So she has a GoFundMe page as well as a event tonight, I believe. I can send the information out, but it'd be good if everybody came out and showed her some support. I'm definitely going to make a contribution to her GoFundMe page.
I believe that she posted on the Facebook group, so more information, check that, but please let us know about the event at the time.
Okay.
Any other announcements? All right, now, okay, so sign up by the 30th. I don't know if you've been paying attention to my ridiculous counting over the past couple of days, but the end of the month, we're in the middle of a membership drive, and of course, the end of the Toastmasters year is on the 30th of June. And so they're trying to make sure that we meet membership quotas and criteria and things like that. And they have a budget for the district. So I want to just kind of overview some of the newer people here, but we have clubs. There's thousands of clubs in the world, and then there are a handful of clubs are an area. They're usually geographically so close to each other. Then a handful of areas are a division, and a handful of divisions are a district. And our district is most of Minnesota and actually part of Ontario. It's kind of a large area. Anyway, so they must have a large amount of money they need to get rid of, and they're trying to offer incentives for everybody to join by the end of the month. If you join by the end of the month, okay, so not only are you going to get the discount we're giving, which is at-cost membership dues of $20 instead of $40, which will get you all the manuals and will get you on the Toastmaster magazine coming once a month. But you also get a $5 Amazon gift card from the district and a book titled Cat Got Your Tongue by incoming District 6 Director Diane Winningley, which is listed at $10. And they have a whole bunch of different materials that they have kind of lying around promotional things that they're going to give you, help with your public speaking. They're going to have an award luncheon in August, to which you'll be invited to as a special guest for joining in the next few days. And so if you're thinking about signing up, please do so in the next couple of days. And because it's kind of a good idea what happened here, what I used to do. So anyway, great time to join. If you have any questions about that, please let us know. We'll help you. All right. So let's see anybody else. Okay, so of course, .NET User Group, Mike is speaking on next Thursday, correct?
Yeah.
And what's the topic again? So about Azure event?
We're going to talk about how to put together a cabinet. We're going to do dovetails. We're going to be talking about DevOps and how we can use the different tools from VSTS online and Azure to go out and build cool things.
Again, so the third Thursday for IoT Tuesday meetup, led by Justin Graham, who came here and spoke about internet for things. All right, so with that said, I will move on to the Toastmaster. Again, for the last time, the entirety of the month, our Toastmaster breakfast is kind of running the tech month here. And today's theme is this technologist's life. Here to tell us all about it, today's Toastmaster Red experts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, fellow TechMasters, and welcome guests. It's nice to see so many faces here this morning. As Vince mentioned, this is the final week of our 4-week series, Tech Month. Now, most of this month has been focused on the tech aspect of technology. A lot of developer-centered topics and that sort of thing. And that's all well and good for people like me, but we're not all developers, but we all do share one thing in common. We all work in technology. So today, the topic is themed all around what it's like working in technology, stories, ideas, anything technology related is fair game. And so this is going to be less probably techy than most of our meetings, and that's also important in our field, right? We all aren't keyboard jockeys. So we have 3 speakers today, and I'm excited. We have 2 guest speakers, and one of our members is speaking, so I'm excited about that. But because we have 3, in the interest of time, we're going to move right along to the business of the meeting here. So starting us out with a bit of levity, our court gesture is Gwen.
So how many developers does it take to change a light bulb? None. It's a hardware issue.
And taking care of all things timing related today is a relatively new member. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Today, I will be timing the portions of the meeting, such as table topics, speeches, if you want to be timed. and indicating the green card when you've met the time, yellow card when you were close to going over time, and a red card when it's
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to go a little out of order here because I want the 1 minute Toastmasters to be able to use the word of the day. Today's grammarian is our future president. Please help me welcome William Austin to give us the word of the day.
Thank you, Brett. In my role as grammarian, I will do a couple of different things. First of all, I'll give you the word of the day, and I'll look for you to use it during your speeches and table topics. Today's word of the day is cantankerous. Often angry or annoyed. It is very easy to become somewhat cantankerous in the commute to the morning office. So I'll be looking for you to use those words. I'll also be looking for filler words such as ahs, ums. I'm even going to ding so's today. And I'm going to take a page from Mike Benkovich. If you do not use the word of the day in your table topic, I will give you the incessant ring until you do.
Thank you, William. For our 1 minute educational portion of the meeting, please help me welcome Brian.
Even though I found out that I was going to do this role as I was stepping out of my car, I'm not going to be cantankerous about it, and I'm going to just jump right into it. So today's topic, educational topic, is about how to introduce a tech speaker. You've been at a lot of tech conferences where sometimes there's been a lame introduction, but according to Toastmasters International, they say that you should be introducing a tech conference speaker in 1 minute or less, that it should be just like a normal or a regular speech, but way more condensed. You should have a brief introduction to include the elements of a full speech, including an opening, a body, and a conclusion. And in that single minute, you should also, your introduction should also set the tone for the topic of the speech. Other suggestions include, it better be brief, to harness some humor, but don't roast the speaker, because it's not meant to be that way. Kill the cuteness. Don't make comments about the speaker's physical appearance or anything else like that. Speak with the speaker ahead of time so that you can add some content about the speaker and some insight that some people might not know. And practice pronunciation. You don't want to skewer the person's name. Sometimes even it says to ignore the introduction and allow the speaker to introduce their own speech, sort of. So that's the 1 minute topic of today.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, moving into our impromptu section. Today's table topic master is a generally cantankerous person, and he's very good looking. So I got that from Ryan. Please help me welcome Jesse.
So Brett must not have cut the cuteness thing. All right, well, welcome, fellow TechMasters, guests. Got a lot of guests, this is great. As Brett mentioned, we got a lot of speaking yet to come, so I'm going to jump right in with table topics. Katie. So one of the hardest parts of my job is coming up with words to name variables, classes, interfaces, so on and so forth. I know you got a background in grammar. Does this help you at all? And maybe you could give us some tips or books or something like that.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I have to say that growing up with a linguist for a mother, I did develop a larger than average vocabulary and a tendency to use rather esoteric words from time to time without thinking about it. This is both helpful in finding phrasing for things. However, it's also been a bit of a hindrance when I end up naming something and someone comes to me later saying, "Hey, what on earth does this mean? I have no idea what this is supposed to do." So it's a balance and a struggle to go between, yes, I think it should be named this, but let's try and dial the words down a bit. The other thing is that I tend to try and be too specific, and I end up with variables that probably break the character buffer limit. So it's a mixed bag. As for advice, I'd say take a moment, spend 5 minutes staring off into space, and try and pick something that simplifies things, and then try and simplify it down even further. Try the rubber duck debugging method of going and to a coworker and saying, hey, if I said this thing is named this, what would you say? And eventually they'll get used to this kind of behavior and it'll help you a bit. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Gwen, knowing you have a background in organization, what are some software, apps, or otherwise any kind of gadgets that might help us, the rest of us out?
Jesse, thank you. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, Jesse has asked for, we've had some conversations about organization, and last time we actually had a sidebar conversation about Evernote and OneNote and whether the pros and cons of each and how to keep our files sorted and in order. I have not, despite being the biggest geek in this area, I have not discovered the secret to this. So if any of you have any advice about this, I'd be happy to hear it. I think the secret is coming up with a naming or organization strategy or a structure to keep your thoughts organized. And for me, the key is really being able to review it and stay current with it. Sometimes I get distracted and I go off and start a new project and I come up with I get all excited because I've come up with a creative way to organize it, and then I lose track of my original organizational method. So for me, the secret is to stick with it and to keep coming back to it and review it. Thank you.
I really like your take.
Oh yeah, and it really makes me cantankerous.
I think I like you guys too.
Mike, so it seems like Windows and Linux are kind of merging almost. Seems like PowerShell and now Bash coming to Windows 10, and with Linux, the UI looking really similar to Windows. Do you find yourself doing a lot more cross-platform these days, or do you think they're still quite a bit different in operating systems?
Mr. Cantankerous, Toastmaster, Topic Master, person who asks these angry questions. Assuming that people will dive into this and take your bait and then go after whatever that dog is you put out there, I have to say, I find this question to be quite disturbing. That there is other operating systems besides Linux is really amazing, because everyone knows that Linux is actually where everything started, where everything comes from. In fact, we know that the Windows Phone is in fact a Linux impersonator that happens to run a Windows kernel on top of it. Okay, maybe not. We know that Bill Gates loves Linux. And ever since we discovered that at the Microsoft conference, Open Source North, we decided that yes, Linux is a good thing. Linux is a great thing. Linux is the Linux thing. And if you speak Linux, you can speak Bash. And if you bash, you can bash other people. And if you bash other people, then you're really diving into the topic like you should, because this is really getting back into those things where you say, you know what? You know that Microsoft thought of it first. In fact, that's where open source came from. Because Microsoft decided we should share everything and make it all free, which is why there's no more Windows being sold. It's going to be just Windows as a service, which is really an interesting idea. But to answer your question, do I think that, do I find myself being confused by all this? I'd say yes. And if you know me, that's kind of my usual state, so it's not surprising. Mr. Topic
My bad.
Thank you for, I think, answering that question. So Vince, you have a lot of children now and a lot less time. So how do you find yourself being more picky about the technologies or programming languages that you learn these days?
Thank you, Mr. Tabletop Master, fellow TechMasters, and our guests. So we now are up to 3 kids, which isn't a lot per se, but when they're all under the age of 5, it feels like 19 kids and counting. So it only gets better. But anyway, so how do I figure out how to manage my time and things like that? First off, I don't understand how I do it. Less sleep, I'm not sure. But I have a trick that I've been employing more and more frequently when it comes to figuring out how to learn what to learn, really. So we have tons of stuff that is out there to learn. I mean, I've never learned Ruby, for example. I've never learned a ton of things that maybe I'd be interested in learning. So what do I do? Kind of a little inside baseball, a little bit of an embarrassing thing to admit, but what I do is if there's a conference or user group or something, I will go and I'll Google something that I'd be interested in learning for like 5 minutes and put together an abstract to pretend I know what I'm talking about, and then I'll submit it. And then if it gets accepted, then I gotta go figure it all out. So I have an excuse, I have a roadmap of what I'm going to learn, and I'm going to become a subject matter expert on it. That's kind of my biggest trick. And with that, if I were to go ahead and just try to learn everything I wanted to learn, I would make my cantankerous life even more cantankerous than she already is. Thank you, Mr. Cave.
Sounds like we got time for one more. Tyler, do you feel like you want to jump in here?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
So the question being, it's been said that we should all learn a bunch of programming languages to kind of widen our breadth. Can you tell us how maybe Python and R would help the rest of us, or maybe how it's different from?
I see. Well, Python and R, how they're useful. In my experience, I've only used Python for a lot of more scripting, more back-end stuff. As far as, so I'll leave that. I think Python, most people are familiar enough. It's close enough to implement JavaScript that it seems like when I've been playing with it. As far as R is concerned, R is array indices start at 1. Just for a quick example of how weird things happen in R. It's really geared towards statistical analyses and stuff like that. And I think it's up until a few years ago, it was almost exclusively academic. Recently, though, I think the quantitative finance guys and gals have started to make use of R in some of the packages that are published for R. So as far as actual production of software, I don't think that R would be all that useful to learn. Although recently, Microsoft, talking about, I've mentioned that Microsoft's changing now recently. They think they've purchased either the company that published base R, it's still free, and they're now starting to build on top of that. So it'd be interesting to see what the folks at Microsoft are able to do with a piece of software written by a bunch of cantankerous academics.
All right. Our esteemed TechMaster. Right.
Thank you, Jesse. The first question you gave Katie reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. You asked her about naming of things, and I think Jeff Atwood, I'm not totally sure, is responsible for this. A lot of people have repeated it. Says there are two things hard in computer science: cache and validation, naming things, and off by 1 error. One of my favorite quotes. It's true too. All right, I'm gonna bring this part of the meeting to a close, and you guys can all take your break. I'm gonna call the general evaluator and the speakers up so we can decide on speaking order. So with that, go get coffee, water, and come back in 5 minutes. Timer, can you put 5 minutes on? Thanks. Jamie,
Yeah. I was ignore you, but I was trying.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah.
I need to step out and do.
I'm the account manager and sales rep here. Success.
What's that?
Outsourcing team for small and medium businesses. We're managed services provider.
And so I'll put back in our link on the app side.
Do you have a slide on the track?
Front end application.
Jane, were you gonna be?
I don't really do too much with application development or anything like that. Set up and maintain computer servers, firewall switching. Okay, pretty much hardware. And then like really Windows server.
Yes. Delve into more onto the app side, or is it more?
I'm sure they do. We don't deal in that, but I would imagine there are companies out there that do that. We just work pretty much with a small business, 10 people or 200 people.
You,
Need a network. You call our office help desk, we'll send out a field tech. Once in a while, so we have personal relationships.
And is it all on-prem or do you have clouds?
We have cloud solutions as well, but we don't have a private cloud or anything like that. We sell Office 365, some of the stuff, and some other cloud solutions for
how many?
storage and backup.
Yeah, it sounds like
Stuff that.
How many Microsoft? I don't care.
For the storage, no, we eFolder is our partner for that.
For the other OS, meaning like email or 365.
365, yeah.
Okay.
Microsoft.
Email and
And we only get that.
We don't do any desktop app virtualization. Really. I mean, you get your license through 365, but I don't do any like desktop virtualization or anything like
I
that.
have this stage.
Yeah,
That's what you say. We're doing that. It Mike's.
You got an OS,
Mike's got that.
it's on your endpoint.
But it's all Windows OS.
Oh, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if somebody has a Windows computer, we could probably support it.
You get
No, it's pretty much Windows OS. Yeah.
How about you? I'm a consultant, IT consultant, more on the integration, application integration side, a lot of years. Applications and that.
Sure.
Oh, that MHC mine?
Oracle,
Oh,
thanks.
thanks.
Microsoft.
Okay.
Oh, how
Sure.
about, you ever have to get upset by
Yeah.
Kind of a broad.
Judd? Yeah. Did you grow up around here? Why? Oh, you didn't? Okay. You look like, I've only met one other Judd and you look a lot like it. Oh, really? I was wondering if it was like years ago when I was in elementary school, but.
No, I lived here for 11 years now.
Oh, yeah. So you won't be the same guy who played baseball with.
No, no.
Oh, okay. How did you hear through?
Here.
Oh, you guys work together? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. I just wanted to see if you were the baseball Judd. You guys want
No, I appreciate it. All good, man.
That's time.
So, I wanted to, slides about having to read off of that.
You have, I think, but if you ever just.
They were recruit you right before the meeting to do that.
I think it's
something that you can ask me about.
I always
throw stuff to be on the spot like that.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do the film, but
yeah.
You want to say
I mean, I enjoy the very, very Technologist. Audiences and that, so that helps to keep sharp on me.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'm mostly, it's existing clients that I manage, and I'm not responsible for new business acquisition. So it's established relationships, so it's a little bit of a jam, but I want to think more quickly on my feet, so more articulate. Always been interested in communication, so kind of working by nature, so.
When I worked for a company, they had it internally for a long, long time. You get out of it, you get busted.
Like anything else, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right, it's so many.
You will.
In fact, I think we'll just get them.
Yeah.
That's where you're on that.
Is that around here?
It was, yeah, it was TechMasters.
Same group?
Same group,
Okay.
yeah. The other one was Bell's.
Right. Like, and, you know,
That was a couple times ago.
Yeah.
This was, I was in for.
So I don't want to have to
And then I got
down
on, I hung out, sit down in town and
Sure.
here, but.
my mind is always like,
Came back over here this summer.
okay, you do that.
Yeah, it's kind of needed where.
Sure.
So I'm gonna try to stick with it.
Yeah. How does that talk about it first too, but it's not some sort of like go for 6 months or a year and then you're done. I mean, it's ongoing. There's not like a course track where it's like, okay, you're good now.
I'm going to call the meeting back into session. We're going to move right into our prepared speaking portion of the meeting. And we do have 2 guest speakers today, so that's very exciting. And starting off is a past member, past president, all around local speaker. He speaks at a lot of conferences. He's one of the foremost iOS experts here in the cities, and I can probably say now beyond the city, because we're working with a lot of clients that probably aren't here anymore. He's also the host of the iFreaks podcast, which has been a pretty big success on my subscription list, so I get to hear him on my phone when I mow the lawn, which is always got a very soothing voice. It's very nice. So here to talk today about how to succeed at podcasting without doing much is the legendary, the one and only James Zuber.
The first time I stepped up to the lectern at TechMasters, I was shaking, grabbing onto this thing for dear life, sweating, the whole deal. I never guessed in a million years that I'd be speaking to thousands of people every week. But I bought a treadmill. That's right. One winter, my wife exercised by walking. It's spring, the fall, summer. It's fantastic. Winter, really tough. It's 10 below. We've got a snowstorm. We want a treadmill. I would say elliptical machine in my basement. That's what I use for exercise in the winter. I treadmill, like, it'll start running. So I did that one winter. In our basement, we got a TV. So we got our DVDs. I watched The Wire or whatever I was watching, Sopranos, Mad Men. I was cool with it. Spring came, like, I'm gonna run outside. Fresh outdoors, it'll be fantastic. So I start running. I hate this. This is so incredibly tedious. I'm tired, I'm out of breath. There's a hill. I didn't even know it was a hill. It's really and I'm running out there, I'm like, this is torture. Like, what do I do? Luckily enough, a friend of mine retweeted something from a podcast. Mark Fowler was one of the Ruby Rogues podcast. I'm like, maybe I'll listen to that while I run. And it helped a lot. So instead of me going, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this every step, I'm like, okay, I'm learning about test-driven development or Ruby or whatever the podcast would actually about. So I started listening to podcasts, and I started listening to the Ruby Rogues. And if you listen to that podcast, Charles Max Wood, at this point, he's got a ton of podcasts. He's got about 10 podcasts. At that time, he did not, but I was listening to an episode. He said he was starting an episode on iPhone development, and that's what I do. I do iPhone development, iPad development, doing that primarily for the last 5-6 years. But I'll check it out. So that's how I heard about the iFreaks podcast. It's what I do. And all these podcasts are the same. He's the host, he introduces it, he works with guests, and he's got 3 or 4 people that are on the panel that show up every week. And we just bring in a guest, we ask questions of the guest. And it fills up an hour, essentially a podcast. And it's a great podcast for listening because a lot of podcasts I listen to, you dig into, there's 1 or 2 people talking, like, this is so boring. Talking about something that's just so tedious for an hour. But if you have 3 or 4 people, it's like a conversation you're listening in. That's the format that I like. Benefits of podcasting. I'm a consultant, so I have a lot of clients, I have conversations. A lot of times we talk about a topic in a client meeting, and I can follow by email, like, oh, here's me talking with the person who wrote that line. And there's something like that. So it builds trust, builds credibility. An odd thing about it is I go to conferences, people recognize me by my voice. I'm a little weird. So I just go to my basement and record it. It's also an excuse to reach out to the leaders in the industry and have a conversation. That's a huge benefit. I get to go and talk to the people that are doing the really cool things. Say, hey, come on this podcast. I'm like, sure. And I get to ask questions. That's rare. If you see my conference, everyone's clamoring around like the cool kids. You can't get a word in, but you have a podcast, you got to do yourselves for an hour and you leave the listen in. And a couple months ago, Microsoft flew our whole podcast out to Redmond to go to the Build Conference. How that happened was they invited iOS podcast out to Microsoft event, but that's how it went. But how do you start podcasting? You don't have to do much. All you have to do is hop on Skype. That's usually enough. If you're interested in doing this, and basically everyone here can do it. Get in front of people, talk like this, people in front of you. I'm talking to my wall in my office. There's people on your screen all the time. Find a podcast that you like. Okay, so find a guest. Everyone here has some topic that they can talk about. So even if you're a beginner, having the perspective of a beginner is valuable to people. Because people that listen to podcasts are people that know absolutely nothing. People know a ton of things. Don't assume that everyone who's listening to the podcast knows way more than you. You know, there's some people trying to do all the time. People that don't maybe do iOS development, they just want to learn the basics of listening in. So everyone here has a viewpoint that's going to be valid. I mentioned that DevChat TV has a ton of podcasts. There's a JavaScript podcast, there's a Ruby podcast, iPhreaks, there's one for freelancers. He has one for React Native, Angular. He's talking about doing Xamarin. So if you want to get involved, reach out to Charles Maxwood, or Andy's assistant at DevChat TV. There's something you can do. And I talked a little bit before about the imposter syndrome, people not thinking they're good enough, people not be interested in what we have to say. Don't think that way. You are good enough, or smart enough. That's Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live. I found that I dated myself a little bit by quoting stuff from like the 80s on Saturday Night Live. I fumble over words all the time. I space out technical terms. If I don't use a concept regularly, I forget it. You don't need to be a brilliant public speaker. I'm not a natural public speaker. Some people in this room were probably here the first time I did a talk, and I was just like I worked at it. And actually, I've gotten better. Some tips. Get on a podcast, you're hosting one. Excellent smart. A lot of times, if you had a drinking game for this podcast, it would be any massive question here. He already knows the answers. We're bringing people on to let them talk about their experience, not for me to show how smart I am. Right? It's not enjoyable. Yet, if I have an idea of what I think the audience would like to listen to over this hour or so, I want to do this subject, this subject, this subject. If I think the guests can bring that out, I'll ask the question that leads them to have the guests. Find the voice. When I first signed up the podcast, there were already 4 panelists and a host and a guest. So that could be 5 people, 5, 6 people trying to get a word in. I couldn't get a word in for a few months. I decided that, we had people that were really strong talking ability, people that had really high level issue they were giving out. I decided I'm going to be the voice of the beginner, make sure that we're covering things that beginners can do. That was just what I did to begin. And as membership changed, I took on more of the technical stuff, I took on more of the high level stuff. But from that point, start to find a voice. Say, I'm going to focus on this thing because you don't have to fit every last piece of your personality into the podcast. You can. You're still frozen. Okay, so I was going to show some images. That's not terribly helpful. For equipment, I've got a USB microphone. Not terribly expensive. The USB Snowball. It's by Blue. Not the greatest sounding microphone in the world. You're not going to record a hit album with it. For a podcast, it is okay. And Charles Banks Wood has a very excellent setup. He's got high-end mic. He's got a preamp recorder. You buy a USB microphone. I have that one right there. The little Snowball Blue. Snowball by Blue. Guitar one, not fantastic, but I've used it. Headphones, you want to get you want to get a good pair of headphones because if you're talking to a microphone, you've got sound coming from the computer, you get feedback, it echoes, it's going to be a nightmare. Get a good pair of headphones. A hardware recorder, so the hard drive, my logic is going to keep up and try doing it. Get a separate device that just records to a hard disk off the computer. CPU. Video chat or just audio chat takes a lot of CPU time. That's most of what I have. How much time do we have for questions? Okay, I can take a few questions if anyone has any questions. Okay. Sorry.
How do you structure your podcast to decide on a topic that you're going to talk on for a particular week?
Sure. So the format is there's like a host, there's panelists that are regular that show every week, and we have a guest. So generally, if we have a guest, whatever that person is talking about, maybe it's the author of some library or something. So we bring them on and they talk about their components. So a guest, we would generally have some idea what they want to talk about. I want to talk about this pattern. I want to talk about Internet of Things, that type of thing. If there's no guests, then from the panel, we'll just pick out something we can talk about and talk about it. Get a rough outline of what we're talking about and then go for it. Snowball. Sony NDR for headphones are very standard, high quality. A lot of probably should use them, so we're good for that. Any more questions?
Right. You said you record with Skype, but where do you publish to? Like YouTube, or how do you publish your podcast out?
So it's available on we have a site, the iFreak site. Gen 10 TV has the site, but it goes to iTunes. That's a lot of it. So the stuff from iTunes. So you just download there. Your podcast app, you can just download it, and people subscribe to it. They get it every week, and they just listen to it when they want to. Right.
How much time do you find yourself doing prep at, like after you got past the ramp up phase of all this self learning? Like how much every week are you putting in for prep time?
Not that much. I searching for guests, emailing them, saying, "Hey, you want to be on a podcast?" Maybe a half hour a week, but not that much. A lot of times we just kind of sit down and go for it. How many time? Do we have time for one more? Sure. You're at 11.
Yeah.
11.
Yeah.
What kind of post processing do you do on your recordings?
So I don't do that. We have an editor. So our show manager, she does the editing, and she has people that do the editing. Probably pretty basic, just a pretty standard thing you just run it through. She does editing, so she'll cut out awkward pauses. You have 4 people trying to figure out who should talk next. You get awkward pauses sometimes. So she does a lot of editing, but I think the processing pretty straightforward, just compression, limiting and brief levels up. But it's not really heavily compressed. You can some put a really heavy compression, and you can really tell it sounds like you're underwater in a box. It's not terribly. So it's not a ton of processing. I'm not sure exactly. It sounds pretty natural. So I think that's all the time we have. Like, thanks. Let's see. I have to leave early. So, but you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Gene at Sharp5 Software. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. But thanks for listening.
If you guys haven't listened to the podcast, you should. I'm not from the iOS part of the world, but I do find it quite enlightening. And you touch on topics not totally related to iOS, like Xamarin and that sort of thing, at times too. So that's all right. All right, thank you, James. Next up, we have another guest speaker, someone who has got vast experience in consulting and operations and a whole bunch of other stuff. I was going through her LinkedIn profile today, and it's like, wow, she's done a lot. And today to talk about how to prepare the perfect, practicing your perfect pitch. Practicing your pitch is what it's called. Please help me welcome Diane Rucker.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, I have a lot of interesting background. One of the things that I did right after I finished my MBA was to work with MIT and Harvard doing some consulting work with the MIT Trust Center for Entrepreneurship. And in the process of that, you hear a lot of pitches, some good, some not so good. But what you learn is that there's very quickly, everyone needs to be able to speak about who they are, what they do, and what's important. And it has to be 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 7 minutes. You have to be able to say it in a short amount of time, catch people's attention. So when I was thinking about what to talk to you about, I adapted a talk that I did last year at Twin Cities Startup Week on practicing your pitch. And it was designed to help entrepreneurs, people with a passion for change or new business, figure out how to pitch their idea. So, but what would interest you the most? I come back to a very simple question. Why is ketchup hard to pour? Anybody ever had trouble with a ketchup bottle? Anybody not have trouble with a ketchup bottle? Yeah, it's one of those universal things. We all know about it. It's something we can all relate to. And there was a group at MIT that was working on these very cool coatings, very slippery coatings that turned into, they tend to be applied to oil and gas industry. And what they found is that this really slippery coating had some interesting applications they hadn't thought about. This coating is called Liquid Glide, and it is revolutionizing the way liquids move. The picture on the right shows you what it looks like, what a ketchup bottle looks like when the liquid doesn't stick to the inside. Liquid Glide makes it a lot easier to pour any liquids. It can be used for a variety of applications. Ketchup is kind of the most interesting and grabbing one. But it can also be used in medical applications and manufacturing, oil and gas, like they originally intended. It was developed by the Varanasi group at MIT as a surface coating. They developed it to make it food grade safe as well. So far to date, they've raised over $7 million in private equity funding, and they were named as one of the top eye-catching innovations for 2015. They have a number of interesting other things on their website, and I'd like you to check it out. But before you do that, you'll notice I've highlighted these in slightly different colors. Liquid Glide, what I've just given you is a very abbreviated version of a pitch. And a good pitch needs to do several different things. First of all, it needs to tell a story, something that people can relate to. Ketchup bottle. We've all been there at a barbecue. Second of all, you need to show the value of the idea. Why is it important? Why do you care about how fast your ketchup comes out? What's valuable about it? In this case, many different applications, lots of different options. You need to build some credibility as well. Where was it developed? MIT, okay, that's pretty cool. How did they develop it? Well, they were working on oil and gas applications. Built up your knowledge of the subject. You've established yourself as an expert in the field. And when you talk about it, suddenly it bears some additional weight. And people listen. You need to also be rational. You don't want to say that you're the next Uber or the next Google. You don't want to say that you're going to raise $5 billion in funding this year. Maybe you will. But you want to start small because nothing makes a VC more cantankerous than hearing somebody who swears they have got the best things in sliced bread. And finally, you want to lead the audience, wanting to know a little bit more about it. Tell them something cool. What are the top 10 eye-catching innovations in 2015? Holy cow, that's cool. Packaging innovations, even if you know nothing about packaging, you know that somebody, an outside authority, an expert, has recognized this as something that people want to know more about. So when you tell them that, you're giving them the opportunity to find you later and to learn more. The pitch is about the hook. Tell them just enough to get them interested and leave them with wanting to know more. There's a lot of ways people screw up a pitch. A pitch again can be anywhere from about 30 to 60 seconds up through about 5 to 7 minutes, not usually a lot longer than that. People's attention wander. You talk about your business plan and you go through the details about your economics, your market, your equity, my guarantee realism. It's interesting, but afterwards. Don't know who your audience is. If you think you're talking to a group of venture capitalists and you're actually talking to a bunch of entrepreneur wannabes, you're going to lose them as well. Because you're pitching for the finance group and people want to know, how did you get started? Where did you get your idea? What did you do next? Depending too much on the slide deck. This one's small for a reason. It's really, really easy to step back and read your pitch. And nobody wants to see the back. Slide deck, honestly, if it went down now, I could keep going. It's irrelevant. It's there as a tool. It's there for people to look at, but they're really interested in you. Believing that there's no competition is another flaw. You gotta do your research before you go in. But you gotta balance the research. How much data do I actually bring? Too much data? I've been in presentations, and I'm sure you have too, where you see lists of Excel charts. They're awesome, but there's too much data. And finally, if you claim a certain value for your product, have something to back it up. You don't have to have an army of charts, statistics, tables, or view graphs to be able to do that. But you do need to be able to support the claims that you make. If you say you're one of the top 10 innovations of 2015 for packaging, say who said that, and why, and who are the other people that were part of that. So finally, actually not quite finally, 2 more slides. One of the questions I often get about being an entrepreneur is like, how'd you get started in this? Did you just know you were going to be an entrepreneur? And the answer is no, absolutely not. In fact, when I did my interview for MIT's Sloan Executive MBA program, the first question they asked me was, tell us about your experience as an entrepreneur. And I said, well, I'm really not one. I started a business. I work in project management. I have an engineering background. I'm not really an entrepreneur. I failed that interview and did not get accepted the first time. I went back the second time and I totally nailed it. Because an entrepreneur is not somebody who just starts a business. It's someone with a passion for change. And that's why I wanted to be there. So anyone can be an entrepreneur if you have an idea, if you have the willingness to talk about it, and if you have the ability to pitch it. I can't guarantee that you're going to win every competition you go to, or that you're going to be the next Uber or Google or whatever, but you're going to do a lot better if you've got a pitch that captures people's attention. So just to remind you again, tell a story. Tell them why it's important. If you can put in a little bit of how it's going to make money, so much the better. Be an expert. You are the one that inspires confidence in the idea that you have, whatever that idea is. That idea can be somebody coming in to be a professional pastry chef in your house. It can be somebody driving to your work to do your oil change. Anything. Be rational about it. Promise what you can deliver. Be realistic about the size of your business, the size of your market, even just the value of your idea. be realistic about how many people are interested in this. And then make sure you hook them in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. The content of this presentation is something that resonates with me quite a bit. As Jesse and I had a business a while back, I remember, as a technologist and a programmer, like, yeah, it's whatever, we're a software company, right? And then you'd be in a networking event and someone would say, tell me about your business. And that became the dreaded question. It's like, then it was like, oh, yeah, I do this. And like, you need to have a story. It needs to be something that's compelling. And I think your guide here was fantastic. And I wish I would have seen it 3 years back. So thank you for that. That was great. Next up, we have a member speaking. And today she's going to be speaking on the business of the dark web. Now, I didn't ask her too much about what she's going to be talking about, but I know that you can get, drugs and prescriptions and all sorts of other stuff that you can get on the dark web. So I'm hoping we're going to find some of the other secrets about the business of the dark web. Please help me welcome our current VP of Public Relations and soon-to-be membership, Cleo.
Business of stolen credit cards, a little quick trip through the dark web. So to start, the reason why I'm presenting on this is because this is an area that is really interesting to me, and it's the reason why I got into application security, because I wanted to know, where is our information going? Who are these people? What are they doing with it? And maybe I can be part of it, not necessarily in a nefarious way, but here we go. So, stolen credit cards, stolen IDs, what does this all mean? Where is this going? Let's use a real life example that we're all really familiar with. I bet everyone can guess the next slide and what company I'm gonna tease a little bit. Yes, Target. So why Target? Target is a perfect example of a perfect storm of stolen credit cards and stolen data. So one of the reasons it is such a good example is because everyone shops there. Does anyone not shop at Target? Right. Pretty much half my paycheck goes to Target, and I would say most of my friends are in a similar boat. So Target is well studied because it was the first credit card breach and stolen data that affected millions of people. It was very public. It happened in very poor times area, right around Thanksgiving and Christmas. And we didn't know about it, and the consumers or Target didn't know about it for weeks. So what happened is this created a buying frenzy in the dark web, in the dark market. 40 million payment card records were stolen, 70 million customers were affected. It was horrible for both the customers and for the public relations of Target. In fact, they are still trying to reel from that. Not that it was necessarily their fault. So what is the dark web's business? I would say the dark web has a business like any other business. They work on demand, quality, and they customize their products. And I'll go into each of those areas a little bit more. Demand. So demand is one of the elements of any business. You can only sell something if people want it, right? And just like in any other business, the dark web also functions in this area. So buying stolen information in the market can be determined by what else is on there. So a typical credit card is worth about $5, and people buy them in batches of tens of thousands. So you spend $50,000 and you get 5,000 credit cards or 20,000 credit cards. Some of those are going to work, some of those aren't going to work, but overall you're going to make your money back. When this breach happened, the demand was through the roof because, again, Target didn't know, the banks didn't know, and the customers didn't know. So the likelihood of you getting a credit card when you buy it off of the black market is it's going to work. The banks aren't going to be aware that there's been a breach, and they're going to get their money's worth. So the prices went up to almost $45 a card, which is unheard of at the time, and people made a lot of money who were selling these things. The second area that
is huge when selling stolen information is quality. Just like in a normal business, quality is equally important when you are purchasing something. The higher the quality means the higher the price. So the Target example again, no one knew that their information was stolen, so they were able to sell these credit card numbers at a huge profit because the quality was guaranteed. No one knew they were going to be able to work higher quality. So the cards were being purchased without banks canceling, and they could command top prices. Some of the most important or highly demanded credit cards on the black market, just for your knowledge, are no limit cards, black Amexes, and any card without a chip and pin. So if you still don't have that updated Wells Fargo card, you probably should get it because you will be targeted. I don't know how they know, but they know. Quality is also an interesting element within the dark web because there is some ethics. So there is a code of ethics within the vendors in this market, and they have a code that says you cannot resell stolen credit cards, and you cannot do false advertising. So you cannot say that 10 out of 10 of my cards are going to work, when in reality, more likely you're going to be having 5 out of 10 that are actually working. And there are, whoever these police of the dark web are, they do monitor this, and if you are caught stealing or doing unethical business, there's irony, right? Unethical business, you will be banned from being a vendor. The final area, here's a great example of prices versus when they're available, sale data. It's kind of interesting. I mean, this is a true market. There's marketing, there is supply and demand. They have police watching who's taking the information and how valid it is. It's pretty interesting. The final area I'm going to touch on is customized products. So this is what was really interesting to me about stolen information. There are sites that you can literally type in, hey, I shop in Minneapolis. I'd like people who are in the zip code, who shop at these stores, give me their information. And you will buy 10,000 records of people in your area. So when you actually go to the store and you have your stolen credit card, it's going to go through. It's not going to get flagged by the bank. And a real life example of when this did not work, when they should have customized what they're buying, I got a call from my credit card company saying, hey, did you just buy a TV from Best Buy in California? No, absolutely not. Had they bought a TV in Best Buy in Minnesota, probably would have gone through and I would have been out that money. This is an example of one of the pages. I'm swiping it so that they have where you can purchase information, how much you can get, how old the information is, and so on and so forth. Even quick buy, like I don't want to type in my information, I just want to buy it and start doing my nefarious activities. You can do that. Pretty good. So in conclusion, this is a real industry. We all are getting targeted. Most of the credit card breaches are happening in the US. 72% happen in the US every year compared to the rest of the world. Millions of information is stolen. The best thing to do is, like we all know, maybe we do, maybe we don't, update your credit cards, change your passwords, make them hard. An 8-character password is the easiest thing for hackers to hack. Go figure, because it's very common. Everyone does 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase. Try and get creative and protect your information, because at some point it's going to fall not on the onus of the credit card companies, but to the customer. So, thank you.
The dark web is a perfect example when you hear about government trying to control industries and control markets. You can't do it. You can't control it. Similar to the effects of prohibition, the dark web will exist because there's always demand for things, whether they're legal or not, or regulated. In fact, in India, a friend of my brother-in-law, his parents owned a pharmacy. The pharmacy no longer exists there, but they sell cancer drugs here. And I didn't get into too many details, but I know it's probably not something that's totally legit from our law standpoint, and that's probably important to say. I don't know that for sure, but I know that there's a lot of pharmacies around the world that are selling cancer drugs, asthma drugs, that are just not affordable here for people that need it. So it's good and bad, and it's a huge topic. All right, so that brings us to an end of our prepared speaking portion of the meeting, and we're going to move into the evaluation. And running us through the evaluation process today is Katie Shimizu. Did I do it? All right. Yes.
Good job.
I practiced it. So come. Help me welcome Katie.
So evaluating our only club speaker will be Vince Bollinger.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Thank you for Clea for a very interesting talk. It was great to hear some kind of a technical thing, but it was something that's applicable to everybody. And I thought that was a really salient topic for everybody, not just technologists, but anybody involved. Of course, people maybe in our line of work, maybe we understand things a little more technically than some of the other people. So it's a little more of a fascinating deep dive for us. So not only is it a pertinent topic for us, but a pertinent topic for everybody. Kind of a great idea for this particular meeting. Slides, I like that a lot of them were very image focused, and they were giant bullet points and things like that. And I try to do a lot of, when I'm making slides, I stop and say, is that too much? I'm putting too many bullets. I don't like doing things like having a bullet where it goes over one line, that sort of thing. And every once in a while, I'll look at it and say, should I get more graphs or images in here, that sort of thing. So it's great to see that. And I think a lot of people really appreciated that. And I know that sometimes that's a critique of some people, myself included, in our presentations. So I thought that was really a good change of pace. And if I'm trying to give any points of emphasis, I would say it seemed like the general basic structure of opening, body, conclusion wasn't quite there as far as how it was flowing together. So while I felt that things were you had good information that was connecting from point to point, it didn't seem like, I felt like at the beginning I wasn't quite set up properly for what was coming. And another thing is the last slide is still up. I don't think anybody can read that. I think I can see like 2 words. So when it comes to that kind of thing, you'll notice that your other slides are working just fine. I'm guessing it might be because they're links or something like that, but they're sometimes get different colors. So make sure that the contrast is strong. That's another thing I've noticed with black background. As much as I like having a black background, I need to make sure contrast that, especially if the lights are still on. So thank you for a very interesting topic, and I'll turn it back over to the General Evaluator.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you want to
Oh. Right.
the whole like
Okay.
cable thing.
You just need to switch tabs, do a control tab or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hit present, upper right.
Okay, so we are not doing voting today.
Okay.
Are we doing?
No.
We're not doing voting today. All right. Well, that's that off the mark. All right. Evaluators, we got that. Best evaluator vote.
Yep.
Vince wins it.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so now it's time for our grammarian report from Will.
Thank you, Ms. General Evaluator. For today's grammarian report, as far as word picture, I wasn't looking for that. I dropped the ball on that. But I did count Gwen, Mike Binkovich, Vince, Brian, Jesse, Mike Binkovich twice, and Tyler using the word cantankerous. So thank you for using the word. And Brett for using the word of the day. Everybody made a pretty good effort on using the word of the day. I think this is something that we need to concentrate on more. It is very difficult to keep that word of the day in mind when you are up there. So thank you for those who did. As far as ahs and ums, I'm not going to go through everybody. The big ones are so's. People are throwing in a lot of so's and you knows. And they go so quickly and so fast that I can't get to the vowel. Other things that I need to report on for grammarian, that's my grammarian report. So I don't have a word picture award for today.
All right.
So everybody did good on the table topics. Everybody was about a minute and a half. Clea's speech was a little bit long at 7 minutes 40 seconds. Vince's evaluation was at 2 minutes 2 seconds. So good job there, Vince. And, that's all I have for the timing report.
Next, our table topics master will be giving out the wise old owl, and the distributor of this bird is Jesse Poole.
You. I'm going to put this up to the crowd. Any nominations? Then I'm going to hand this right back to you because I think that you actually gave a very good reply on how to use words and your background and stuff like that.
Thank you, Jesse.
You
Okay, best speaker evaluator awards. Everybody's awesome.
Yeah.
And general evaluation of the meeting. We are at 8:56, so we are slightly over, but I noticed that during the time we kept pretty tightly to the schedule, maybe a couple minutes ahead of it even until we went to the speaker section. Things went a little bit over, but anything else that I should be evaluating at this point?
Postmaster, theme, anything?
Postmaster, theme, anything? Brett, I thought when we were going to talk about this technologist's life, it would be a little bit more from the perspective of a programmer. Being a programmer myself, I tend to be self-centered that way. But we actually had a very interesting range of topics about things that affect us in a way that just being, as you said, keyboard jockeys. So I thought that was good. And everybody had really good responses to the table topic questions and very good speeches, very good presentations from our guest speakers. Thank you to Diane and James. James, yes. So overall, good meeting. And back to our TechMaster, Brett.
Thank you, Katie. Again, big thank you to the guest speakers. James is wearing a colored shirt or something. It's invisible now. So thanks. It was very good to have. It's always nice to have fresh faces here and hear new things. So thank you for that. I'm gonna close out the meeting by calling up our club president, and this will actually put an official end to TechMonth. So please help me welcome Vince.
Okay, so there. All right. So is there any new business? Announcements?
Next week, the executive. Next week, the executive meeting.
Yep, so if you are on the club executive committee and you have been ignoring my emails like Will has, then we have a meeting next Tuesday morning preceding our meeting at Perkins, the closest one, not the one somewhere else. Okay, that's on Francis 494, just north of the interchange here at 6:30 again. And if you care to have your voice heard, if you're on the club executive committee, please do show up. All right, and let's see, any other announcements? So let's see, next week's meeting, let's see who's Toastmaster next week. We shall see. Next week's Toastmaster is Mike. So, as is typical, the next week's Toastmaster is not here, which is for some reason just an odd occurrence that happens all the time. So we will make sure that Mike gets an email out quickly to come up with a theme, and then please respond to that with an introduction. All right, do we have a closing thought from the invitation handler director?
Yes. A rebel is a person who conforms to non-conformity.
That if for that of an iconoclast, okay. All right, and with that, I will just mention that we will not allow anyone to leave until we get a couple more members to sign up. Just letting you know, we'll close the door and we'll barricade. All right, with that I will adjourn the meeting.